All right. I believe. Right. Uh, all right. Welcome, everybody. I'm super excited to discuss my book launch. My name is Carsten Kraus. I am the founder of the CDO Times, cdotimes.com, and also author of the AI Ready Leader. And I wanted to, share this great milestone with all of you guys and have a great panel here too. That we will talk about some of the topics of the book. Hopefully, we can all learn a little bit of this. That's part of the idea of writing the book that I wanted to share with my network. Take lessons learned from my peers, lessons learned from case studies, and also looking at how can a leader be AI ready in these days, because the train is heading towards us. There's a lot of AI investments going on, as you might have noticed, and even some projections of having by 2035 a $1.7 trillion AI market. So it's a big opportunity, but also a big problem sometimes when you don't have an approach, right? If you just jump in, eyes closed, sometimes that doesn't work out too well. I kind of sometimes compare that to, if you put a jet engine on your tricycle, it might get you somewhere very fast, but it probably will not end well. So with that being said, I'm super excited to talk about the book. You can find it on Amazon. I think we might have a link here that you can go to and make it available. And so maybe let's kick things off just looking at the book. So real quick, the book is called the AI Ready Leader, HI plus AI. So HI stands for human intelligence. We can't forget about the human intelligence. That's one of the key things that I've noticed during hands-on experience when I helped Wendys and Campbells and Breville and other companies with their digital strategy, data strategy, AI strategy. And so a lot of this is built in here. And there have been many studies, recent studies from predominantly Harvard Business School, but also MIT and others, McKinsey, that highlight that we need to, we can achieve greater outcomes together, right? So that's where the elevated collaborative intelligence, you can collaborate, you can use tools, but there's research from Harvard with BCG and with Procter & Gamble with the cybernetic team weight has proven that you can, out of 1,500 companies that looked at that, you can achieve tasks 12.2% to 25% faster and have outputs that are rated 40% and higher quality. Thank you, Boris. Appreciate that. And then with Procter & Gamble, they also looked at teams individually and teams working with AI, and clearly we're onto something here. It is a exciting technology, but the formula that we were talking about in the book is, when you break it out, it's human intelligence plus artificial intelligence times an accelerator, technology accelerator multiplier, T. And then you obviously want to try to minimize the risk. That's the R factor. And so the book breaks it out by industry, by department, so you can tailor it to your specific outcome. So the ECI really stands for a metric that you want to impact, and then you can look at the factors of, human intelligence, artificial intelligence, what's your technology foundation, and how do you minimize the risk. So here's a quick preview of the table of contents, right? So I actually kick off the book with something that's hopefully entertaining and insightful. It's a fictional story about a researcher, a little bit like if you saw The Day After Tomorrow. I thought I like books that kind of get you into the topics, and so it's about the researcher that then also uses human intelligence. But I don't want to give away too much. But I think it's probably fun for folks. And then we get into the real nitty-gritty details, again, practice-oriented, but looking at the trends that are out there and breaking down the ECI formula. And thank you, Claire, appreciate that. And then we get into, what's your T-score, your technology score, what's your risk variable, what are somewhat factors, examples of what can go wrong, what do you need to consider, the power of human intelligence. Again, don't forget about humans. Humans, I almost have to take a pause here, right? Where it's, we are saying that we're going to implement AI, but who's really implementing it? Humans. And humans, are ultimately your stakeholder that the initiative will be a success. So let's please not forget about this. And then, of course, you have the technology multiplier and the risk factor. And then we go through some playbooks. So there's an actual assessment guide that comes with, it's kind of linked to the book on cdotimes.com. So that's, included in that. And then we look at different playbooks, things that could go really well, some good examples, some examples that didn't go well that we can learn from, some examples where, quite frankly, sometimes you jump in and you learn yourself, and then you can share that lesson. So I had some experiences myself, we adjusted, and then we're able to be successful. So similar with, I think it was an example for Whirlpool, where initially it didn't go well, and then the CIO adjusted, and it then went really well. So, and then we kind of kick it out with looking at the road ahead. Why do we care about this? Jensen Huang is saying in 2025 the year of AI agents, agentic AI, right? And I think we have world models and other things that are coming our way that we all need to consider as technologists, as business leaders. And yeah, this is part of the introduction. We end then with the fictional story again on how Sophie's doing afterwards, and then ultimately quick and don't want to give them much away, but there will be a new hero that will be entering the realm at the end of the book, so check it out. And with that being said, I then now want to introduce my panel. Let me undo this here. So we have, maybe you guys want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Grant Ecker. I'm the chief architect at Ecolab and the founder of the Chief Architect Network. Really proud to be a part of this event, and really happy for Karsten. I know creating a book is a lot like having a new child enter the world, and it's really exciting to see Karsten coming out the other side of a significant adventure to build this. So thanks for including us in the conversation, Karsten.
Thank you.
Casey, go ahead.
Thank you. Congratulations, Karsten. This is really exciting to see. It was so fun to talk to you about this over dinner not too long ago.
At the Chief Architect Network Boston, right?
Exactly. So I'm Casey Clarke. I'm a fractional CTO, having spent many years in consulting primarily in cloud. But lately, a lot of my work has been with the Sustainable Architectures Working Group and sustainableIT.org, working specifically on sustainable responsible AI. So, bringing that human factor in, really considering the risks that we have with AI as well as all the advantages. It's your approach has a nice blend to it. So I look forward to going through it in detail.
Great.
And Yael?
Congrats again. I think writing a book is a huge endeavor on itself. So congrats for that. Thank you for the read. It was certainly great for me to read. Yael Gomez, I'm operating in the same space as Casey, as a fractional CTIO. Right now, mostly in the hardware and software product engineering. So everything is about AI in different bits of the product, and everything is about what it means. What does it mean for the humans using those products? So thank you very much for having us. Thank you very much for the book, and looking forward to the chat.
Great. We also had Michael join just in time.
Hey, Michael Lenart, the third fractional CTO chief architect here. So we win the bingo here. So no, AI is transforming everything so fast here. I've just been on some conferences here, and really all the startups and stuff that's happening. This is really fundamental to really being successful in this day and age coming forward.
Exactly. 100% agree. It's sometimes it's really, you need to look at the skill set for you, for your team, for your organization to look into the future. And what's nice about the ECI framework is that you can adjust towards that. It's actually expected that there will be probably a shift over time where you might have not a lot of AI, a lot of human, or maybe building the baseline and things like that. And then going forward, there might be a little bit more AI, but it's never a good idea to have humans out of the loop, right? I mean,
right.
You just have to watch some science fiction movies to see that that's not good. But I think we can, understand that. But super excited to have you guys here. Super excited to, share with the LinkedIn community right now. So very excited. So with that being said, I thought maybe we can, talk a little bit about some of the experiences that we're having. When I guess one thing that I thought we could kick off is the book is relatively new. Many of you maybe have glanced over some of the book or had an early version of it, and we're able to look at some things. Was there anything that resonated with you specifically, or maybe of what you're experiencing right now working with clients or working with your company?
I loved that you talked about like technology readiness as a multiplier for the human plus AI component. Like clearly that addition is really what allows us to have a capability. But that technology adoption factor, I thought was exactly right, in that it's a multiplier, right? It's a multiplier positive or it's a multiplier negative. And the reduction by risk acceptance also makes a lot of sense to responsibly enter the space. But again, that wasn't a multiplier. That was just a regular plus minus math, right? So I thought that was a really helpful way to think about it, and not the way that I've seen anyone else kind of convey this in our speaking circles. So, and I think it really is true, because to me, especially that technology adoption readiness multiplier, we've seen that amazing tech with a culture that's not ready won't go anywhere. And just somebody willing to start and take some risk where the culture is ready will get better results than even incredible solutions. What do others think?
No, I'm dead on with that, Grant, because I've seen too many organizations adopting, I'm going to say, new technology without the people readiness or the organizational readiness. And then all of a sudden, because of the lack of whether it's process, learning, culture, etc., has really set back the ability to benefit from that technology. So to me, that's fundamental number one in order to get the value that you hear about in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As a matter of fact, there's currently 45% of CEOs saying that they are facing a significant pressure to explore and adopt AI and generative AI strategies, but only 18% feel that they are prepared. So really everybody's kind of going in blind and crossing their fingers and jumping on the bandwagon. And I wrote an article some time ago at CDOTimes.com about talking about the AI graveyard, the AI pilot graveyard, because as we all know, not a lot of these solutions are unfortunately making it to production. So in many cases, it's also about looking at, what's your business case? What are you trying to measure? And then aligning around that. So identifying your ECI factor and the business case for it, and then optimizing it. That's really a good starting point versus just going in and deploying the technology and trying to figure out, what you get out of it.
So, Karsten, your emphasis on the human in the loop with this is so important. So many of these pilots are failing. There's a new study that came out not too long ago from MIT Technology Review claiming that 95% of the AI projects are failing to deliver on the expected ROI. And a lot of this is not that the pilots are completely failing. It's, a whole variety of reasons, from trying to add AI to a process that's already broken, having bad data going into it, unreasonable expectations about just how much of the human interaction, particularly with customers, actually need to be human to human. And so the false expectations and not really looking at all the people and process side, and as you put, the tech readiness for this, in addition to just getting excited about, I have a great tool that's going to, generate all sorts of text or images for me. That's the unreasonable expectations and not really preparing the organization and preparing the individuals to be augmented as opposed to replaced by AI is a great emphasis of your book, and I look forward to digging much further deeply into it.
As a matter, but I after our discussion, I felt like you mentioned that you knew about some MIT research, and I felt like I had to update the book quickly before I release it, because so I added some of the details of the EPOC study, right, or framework, where it's all about the the strategic thinking, critical thinking, emotion, the situational awareness. Those are some things that machines are pretty far off. I mean, a lot of people are talking about AGI, artificial general intelligence, but I don't think, there's so many things where we humans are unique, but at the same time, we can't be afraid of the technology. Yael, what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, I like what you did with the formula or the framework, because you managed to crystallize. A lot of folks are talking about human in the loop, but what does it mean? AI, human in the loop. I mean, AI is a thing of many flavor, and what does human in the loop means? And you sort of, first of all, you put this together in the formula, and you manage to crystallize, to distill the essence of that, which is AI is really good at prediction. Humans are here to exercise judgment. And that's how we make decisions. And all of that is magnified by technology and hampered by risk. So I think you have those sorts of four critical components of what it is really that you've distilled very well separated. And that gives folks levers to think about AI in their context, in the context of their enterprises, their industries, and how those levers should be tuned differently. And I really love that you did that work to crystallize that, to separate that very clearly.
I appreciate that. it reminded me of some of the things that we did, and I developed some of the framework from my experience, like when we looked at Wendys AI voice drive-through, and unfortunately, I think McDonald's had at some stage some more negative reactions that they adjusted after the fact too to make it better. But one thing that we were looking at there was to use the right level of technology with the human balance. So having the humans in that hear the order, maybe able to interject the AI that was trained on natural language really well by Google, and then serving food with a smile at the end, right? And that's what it was about. It was about the right balance, and those are some things that where you combine the technology underpinnings that I know we all know really well, right? But in our leadership roles, we also need to connect to the business, the case, the consumer, the customer, right? What does the customer need? Understanding that, and then taking these factors into consideration. So that's why I felt like I had to put this into a book, because we need it. We all need it. And we will need it more and more, because it's not the technology disruption and quite frankly the news that comes out and the acceleration of new developments, great new technologies, is just accelerating, and we need to have some ways to work with that and evolve with it.
And if I may build on that, I think the interest of the way you put that into a framework, albeit fairly simple at high level, is really suited for the technology we are contemplating. It's a general purpose technology. It will go everywhere. It will drive innovation. It will drive operational excellence. It will be deployed everywhere. And therefore, you need to have tools and ways to think about that in a consistent way, though it is applied in very different contexts. And I think this is where the framework you propose is super elegant, because it allows that flexibility. It might not be 100% perfect, but gives the foundation and the basis to have that flexibility to think about that in many different contexts, which we will have to do with that technology.
Right. I really appreciate that feedback, and I just thought about it now. Maybe I should have said I always thought about this, but because if you use this framework across your organization, now you can align, because you're talking the same language across the different departments. And so if you do an AI pilot in sales, you do an AI pilot in finance, you can now compare and see, like, okay, this is what we use. These are the technology multipliers. Oh, I have the same multiplier. So work with your enterprise architect to have that common technology that can enable multiple, AI initiatives and innovation initiatives. I don't want to just limit it to AI, because we have quantum breathing down our neck and whatever, but that's the question.
I'm glad you said that. Dr. Lorian Pratt had this question, and also a member of our Chief Architect Network. When we talk about AI, what is our definition of AI? Is it Gen AI, ML, symbolic, the whole kitchen sink? What do you think?
Who wants to take that? I can take it.
I think the challenge here, Grant, is everybody thinks immediately of ChatGPT or Gemini, the frontier large language models. But where I think we're going is actually much more towards task specific. Are we trying to automate? Are we trying to summarize? Are we writing, proposals or emails, or doing enhancements to video? We're going to end up with a whole range of tools that are actually much better trained for this specific task and much more efficient, and maybe not created with such polluted data as some of the large language models that we have out there. The problem is, how do we get that tool set built so that we're not ending up with the same problem we've had with monitoring tools? How many how many of our clients have like 16 different monitoring tools?
Right.
So how do we balance between the task-specific ones that give us the best quality of AI for what we're trying to accomplish, with managing the number of tools we actually have to integrate in at the enterprise level?
Mm-hmm.
Because it isn't just, one tool to rule them all.
Absolutely not. And I think maybe to add to that, I think AI is just one tool, and then within AI, there's different paths you can go down towards. In some cases it might be collaboration. Actually, I know that a lot of chief HR officers are really excited about the book. When I was doing a presentation for CDO Media in front of CHROs and learning managers, because they're trying to figure out what's the operational model. I talk about that in this book too. What's the operational model, and how do you leverage these AI solutions? It could be, a collaboration tool. It could be, in some cases, even as far, maybe a little bit out there, but you're the manager of AI agents, and the AI agents have names, and they're part of your team, and they're working hand in hand. So it's kind of an interesting mix to try to figure that out.
Now, in reading through the book, I didn't see anything that precluded any particular manifestation of AI from being applied to this model, which is what I liked about it. Because, if you were really specific to a certain kind of tech, this thing would have more of a time span, an expiration date, right? And I found that the kitchen sink applicability really does help this model kind of stay applicable for a longer period of time.
Right. Now that's a really good insight. I'm learning so much more about my book while we're talking about it. Now it's all part of the strategy.
An interesting question Dr. Lorian also brought on, but this one's from Gokula out of Chicago. He'd say that pilots are bringing unreadiness to light, and it's a positive effect. And she'd asked earlier, do you really want to have your data ready to jump into AI, or do you want to use your AI to expose your lack of data readiness? What do you think, and what does the book tell us, Karsten?
Well, I have been a head of business intelligence for Keurig Dr. Pepper and other areas, led the business intelligence strategy. And what I can tell you is, yes, your data pipelines are the foundation for what you're looking for. Now, obviously, it's all about the scope of the AI pilot. If you can keep it small, you can probably get away with something, not all enterprise end to end. But it's a good idea to look at your data. Where's your data? Understanding the metrics, aligning, all that busy work, the pipeline work. Maybe AI can help with that even. But in general, I think you have to have your ducks in a row, so you can successfully go to production. So I see that as a key T multiplier factor. Just the same, like you need to have your cloud technology in place, just the same way you need to have your FinOps or maybe AI FinOps in place.
I would agree. It's a key factor to realize the full value. I don't necessarily think this is a must-have to start. I think if you wait to have perfect data to start, you never start. So I think two things can be true at the same time. Again, because AI is a very broad term and will deploy in many different areas. When you buy models that have been trained by others to optimize some of your business processes, you don't have a data problem. You have an integration problem, right? When you want to build models to create differentiation, then your data problem can be exacerbated and will very likely impair the value realization.
Yeah, I think it's use
so I
case
think we have
driven.
to be open to two things can be true at the same time. You need to start the journey and at the same time work definitely on your data. Sorry, Mike, I cut you off.
No, you're right. I said it depends on the use case and the pilot, right? Because if you're doing RAG, your data is crucial associated with it. And if you're using the bad data, the outputs are going to be worse, and therefore the credibility of its use is going to go down also. And if you're in healthcare, like I was, you know, that risk even goes further up with people's health. So, you know, there's difference between, I'll say, generic use of AI versus more data oriented from in-house.
100%.
You know, we had Vipin come up with a question just a moment ago, and he's questioning on the R factor. Of course, in our model, that's risk, right? In the subtraction, I think that might be a good place to bridge. Certainly an area that has a lot of discussion. So he's asking, how can leaders manage that R factor, reputation, regulation, and the runway AI has without losing the speed and agility needed to realize the ECI outcomes?
That's where, to me, governance comes in.
Right.
There needs to be a certain aspect of governance and what is the risk and what is the variable associated with the deviation from the metrics or expected outcomes. To me, that's where the critical and the constant monitoring of it, so you can start seeing the biases associated with it.
I agree with that. I think this is the critical body for having those conversations. You need to have a good governance place where those conversations can happen, and leveraging a framework like the one you have proposed. Again, assessing, if we think about prediction and exercising judgment in our business processes, humans are not perfect. We are making predictions errors, which leads to poor decisions. So as you look at your use cases and you want to understand the risk and your appetite for it, you sort of start measuring, hey, what are the risks of failed prediction by AI versus failed prediction by humans, right? And how do we compare and contrast that? And what is our appetite for our industry to have a little bit more failure or maybe less failure? I mean, Waymo has a famous report that says autonomous car drives better than humans. Still, we don't like when they crash, right? So I think that governance is really where it's that key body where those discussions needs to happen, and that assessment of AI versus human be discussed.
Well, yeah, I agree that governance is very important, but given how prevalent AI is going to be, it's not just governance, it has to be training. You know, we have a significant problem with synthetic certainty, where business users who aren't that familiar with that technology are trusting what is coming out of the large language models or the various engines. You know, they don't understand the difference between a deterministic answer you would get out of a traditional thing like an accounting system versus a probabilistic answer that is coming out of a statistical thing like a deep learning neural network. We have to educate, you know, all of our business users to double check what they're actually getting, because the more complex the query, you know, there's no amount of RAG or MCP that can completely make up for the fact that these things hallucinate.
Yeah.
It's intrinsic to the probabilistic approach and how they put in the weights and how they've tuned. You know,
you are 100% right. I was really more discussing the big enterprise use case, but you're right, and I would go as far as pushing, not necessarily educating the staff, but I would say expose people. You need to be exposed to that technology, to feel it, to sense. So education is important, But if you just educate people and you don't expose them to what ChatGPT is able to produce, they are not learning. So I think it's a combination of enable those tools in the enterprise for the users, train them and push them. Moderna as a policy of having all of their employees using AI, they've reached 50%. This is a mandate. 50% of the staff is working with ChatGPT or whatever.
Right.
And that's how you learn. And that's how you realize what it is. I think both are true. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think, one quote that I often like to say is that Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said that, we will automate 50% of the work that we're doing so we can focus on the other 50%, right? So you will learn using the tools and then leveraging that. Now, from the risk factor, coming kind of back to that, of course, I have so much to say. I forgot to mention that, it's relevant to me because I have been a CISO, in two roles previously. And it's very important to look for regulatory readiness, right? Especially if you're a global company, to look at, what's the regulation in countries that you operate, and sometimes maybe in the US can be a little bit more lax, even though in California is probably pretty close to where it's in the rest of the world. But, so there's some strategies that, I'll talk about that in the book, like how do you bring people together, right? Because this is not really a technology discussion. Any kind of case when you're a chief information security officer too, half of your job is business, right? And I mean, I would say actually that counts for all of us here, but you need to look at regulation, you need to look at data privacy, bias, and part of that is maybe to have an AI council where you bring together, your enterprise architect, your general counsel, your cybersecurity team, maybe some folks that are exploring the technology right now. Many people have the target right now. I know, I probably do, and other people have the target to do AI pilots this year and use the technology in the right way. And the problem is, how do you do it, right? What framework do you use? And in many cases, we might revolve back to, okay, let's bring in the quite expensive, big consultant company that gives us advice on what to do. And then ultimately, maybe, you haven't learned after that big implementation happened, and, you haven't really institutionalized it because, as part of all of this and many technology initiatives, we are change managers. We need to have the change coalition internally, build that out, and then continuously evolve more and more in an agile fashion, right? That we iterate, see what works. So that might be the flip side. You have to balance like how secure you want to be versus, stopping all innovation. You don't want that either, right? So we got to find that right balance. So that's super exciting discussion.
I pulled up a section of your book that I enjoy, Karsten, because I think it really plays to this, where when you move up from the automation into augmentation into advanced sort of unpredicted use cases, the amount of human integration and the amount of feedback loops you need at each layer, I think, is something that we're all seeing in our industry, and that you have to lay the foundations to have context. You have to have that also have its learning loop. You have to have in the augmentation layer of a little bit more defined, but human judgment based problems. When does it come to you to request, the go right, go left, that escalation? How does it know what data to trust? Each of these layers becomes more fragile and needs more and more human integration. So I love that you created this as a bit of a Maslow's hierarchy, and it's a lot of the conversation I'm seeing in the Chief Architect Network with Jesper and a few others around how you move to these higher order use cases and why that HI component becomes just so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's I appreciate you pulling that up. That's a good one. And when you look at these aspects, many cases too, when you assess your individual department or part of the organization, you look at where do you stand. In some cases, you might be in different aspects, and you can identify where do I have my gaps, right? Because if we just look at the whole thing where we kind of can't see the forest from the trees anymore, right? And so that sometimes it helps to step back, have a framework where you can go on the balcony and look down and see what's actually happening, right? Because so that's super helpful. I really appreciate that feedback.
And I think with a framework like this one, which feels like a formula, right? An equation. There's an equal sign on the right that could be outcome, value. So let's say you baseline for the value of 100. What that gives you is maybe you are in healthcare or in a bank and your risk appetite is very low. But what that gives you is 3 other levers that you can play with without compromising your R position, and you can play with those other levers. Or maybe I need to be much better at technology, maybe to get to the same outcome, but that doesn't preclude you from achieving the same level of performance in the end. That gives you the tool to think about it.
Yeah, I love that. I'll add it to my second edition of the book.
That's the truth, right? As you were talking about, I had to add that, and I had to add that, and at some point you have to say, edition 1 complete. Let's start to build edition 2. Question from Claire that Casey also enjoyed in the chat. As teams build AI literacy, how do you train AI so double checking becomes structured value using hypothesis tests, counterfactuals, red teaming instead of manual rework? What do you think? Who wants to take this one? And the answer very carefully doesn't count.
Oh, Karsten, you wrote the book. I think you need to take first crack at this.
I agree. It's only fair.
I was just so excited to see Claire on there. I didn't even pay attention to the question because Claire has been helping with the book. So she's my daughter, and so she helped with the editing. She's actually currently in the job market, had scholarship and many awards for change management and communication management. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that Claire is in the market, and I think she's super talented and super bright. So thank you for that question. I think it was related to, how do you incorporate, humans in your strategy when you're deploying AI solutions, and I think you need to find that right balance. The formula helps you to identify where you're strong, where are people strong, where do, even as leaders, right? This book is also for the AI ready leader. It's in the title. So, because, as leaders, we need to be ready and understand how do we want to deploy this technology? How do we want to elevate our organization and future-proof our organization for all this disruption that's coming there? And that needs to flow down to, the other parts of the organization, and making sure that, you have the right strategy in place. You line the pilots and technology and collaboration tools to take advantage of this. Is anybody else that wants to take a crack at it?
I'm going to do a quick build on that. I think you can steal what Karsten did with the prologue of the book. Sometimes add to your strategy to educate people role playing. It's extremely powerful. Bring role playing into your education program. Make people experience what AI doing well is and what AI going wrong is. And this is super powerful. I think this was a powerful way to bring us into the meat of the book, to have that story at the beginning. I think that stories works with humans more than with AIs, and we should use it to educate humans for what concerns AI.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. It's what you both said reminded me of, Harvard was always legendary for their MBA program that was based on the case method. And you think about a new sort of case-based education methodology, but now with AI, given how complex this is to integrate in and the kinds of problems we could tackle, it's, is there a new AI MBA now that would educate people, using a case method of what works and what doesn't? Anyway, just speculation out there, but there's some radical changes in how we educate people in businesses in this new age. Case method is going to be essential for that.
Yeah. I'll add on as well. I think one of the key differentiators of the AI technology is the ability to have the solution learn from what feedback it's getting. If you get, the typical automation solutions that we're used to, you build something that follows matching rules and starts to put things into piles, and then you start to get a pile of the discards, the things that don't match. And you manually go through and you work the backlog, and it shows up again next week. And one of the key differentiators that I find in the AI technology is the ability, if you set up the solution this way, to notice how humans are interacting with that discard pile. And instead of doing robotic process automation, the same thing over again, it's going to use that to make it smarter next time. And that's where I think Claire's question around how do you kind of get out of that old loop of redoing the same thing over and over again is one of the keys. Is the human interacts with the system. How do you take that input and have it be a feedback loop to feed that AI foundational model?
Right.
And at the same time, you have to also teach humans not to trust the answers. Precisely because we are the source of the answers. So I have seen amazing progress in enterprises around people start understanding I need to write a good prompt, a good question, otherwise I have a bad answer. So now people are writing better questions and they're happy, they are having better answers. But still they don't know where the answers are coming from. And I think there is, the industry is evolving a lot on that front. And we need to push for that as technology leader. But what are authoritative source of truth when an LLM goes on the web to search and compile answers? There's a lot of rubbish on the internet. If your authoritative answer comes from rubbish, you still have a rubbish answer with a good prompt or a good question asked. So we need also to educate people about that. And as an industry, we need to lobby much more. And think much harder about that. What are the sources that we can trust or not, and how can we get those type of resources emerging on the internet in support of the companies we're trying to build?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Sorry, you wanna?
I just wanted to add, because I think this is exactly right, and I think you'll also find examples where the question the machine might have is, hey. And this is an example from Coke companies, another network story where they were doing order optimization to figure out how to best load trucks to fill orders at Georgia Pacific. So one of the things that they found is they had these rules of never pay a late fee, always accommodate X, Y, and Z. And then the AI would figure out, hey, I can follow all your rules, but if I break one and take one late fee or one case of Dixie cups, I can actually get a fill rate that's 9% higher this week. Do you want to accept that? And this is the kind of feedback loop that isn't just necessarily, is this answer right or wrong? It's actually asking you, given your business context, is this an appropriate trade-off I can make in the future? And that's where I'd love to see the AI goes, okay, yeah, in the case of a huge change in supply chain that we can gain from a human in the loop question, I now know that this is not out of bounds. I can accept a late fee in certain scenarios. I might ask again, or I might even codify a variance where I don't even need to ask. I know it's okay in certain scenarios. So sometimes there's like facts that we have to watch, and other times it's like trade-offs. And I think there's a really unique space that triangle you're creating allows us to apply this in a business setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's also a lot of there's some industries that have really explored this a little bit more, traditionally have a lot of data. I mean, we talked about medical and pharmaceutical companies. We talked about banks, right? It's kind of a strange thing in some cases. The risk averseness and making sure that I think to Yael's point, you keep the R factor under control. But how do you innovate? Because you need to innovate, and you have then something like Bloomberg GPT that are offering their service to other companies, have a new business model, a new revenue source. And I finally, read Claire's questions. and so, I actually also cover a lot about, in cybersecurity, we've been using machine learning and technologies for a long time. I've used it. And part of that, though, is also when I talk to CISOs on a regular basis. In the past, I've done some events for CISO conferences. And so when I hear from my CISO peers, I heard that they're starting to use AI to help people to train, get up to speed faster, probably more in a RAG type environment. You don't want to learn off the internet. I think to everybody's point here, unfortunately, the information on the internet probably gets worse and worse, right? So and explainability of AI solutions is becoming very important. Like in some of the pilots that I did, we want to specifically understand, how did you come up with this recommendation? So when you see the recommendation, it's like, it's based on all these factors that are based on our data, and that's why you're recommending it. And then it makes a lot more sense, and it's a lot more, has like a higher trust factor. We were thinking like there should be a startup that comes up with like a AI trust factor scale, so you can really show how trustworthy it is. And go ahead.
Yeah, there's actually a number of efforts out there, not only the trustworthiness of the various AIs, and there are some scores that are going out there. In fact, Microsoft has worked on one. There's a scoring mechanism that they are, but there's also scoring like the AI energy score from Hugging Face and the Coalition for Sustainable AI, because there is a factor of what is the real cost, as well as what's the real impact of using a lot of these AIs. But your point earlier about needing to incorporate those feedback loops, in some cases, we're going to have to look to the future. There are some newer emerging approaches to AI, like cognitive AI and neurosymbolic AI, which are doing a lot more where the neurosymbolic is, bringing in the neural networks along with the expert systems and the context, some of the things that got dropped, a while ago because it was taking so much work. But in some cases, the use case you have that would be great for AI, maybe the AI isn't quite ready enough. And maybe you wait a little bit to see what's coming out of the labs. So that, rather than, I have Gemini or I have Claude or I have ChatGPT, they're the bigger is better. They can be multimodal and solve all our problems. The problem with them is they're pre-trained. And, all the RAG and all the MCP and all the other things that we're doing are just patches on the fact that they're just pre-trained. And so what's coming next out of the labs? What's the innovation? Is your problem better suited for something that is more an emerging area of AI rather than what's on the market right now?
Right. And that's what we need to be ready for. I think one thing that you you started off with, I think it's super important. I know you're an expert in that space, right? It's sustainable architecture. And I think with AI, I'm just curious on how you could leverage the ECI formula to address and quantify some of the initiatives that you are doing for sustainable architecture, sustainable AI, and put that into place. Thank you, Grant, for pulling that up. So this is, an example of what is in the book, and also some of the work tools that are available on CDO Times for pro members and for purchases of the book. But basically, you can look at this from any angle, right? In this case, it might be operational efficiency and agility. It could be even more like certain sustainable circular economy topics and whatever. Not whatever, but I think that's the point. Like, you can apply the formula to these different aspects, and then look at the leading indicators in HI, human intelligence, AI, T, and R, and map that out. So I think that's the part where I'm excited, even hearing the feedback from you now, and it seems like I'm hearing what I'm thinking, that it's resonating, right? Because it's something that we need a formula that we can apply across the organization, and how we can talk to each other. So I think this is helpful.
Well, in calculating the value of AI, we have to go beyond, what's the pure business case out there from a financial point of view. There is extensive impact environmentally, on energy and energy prices, on carbon, on water, on the e-waste and circular economy from the huge build out that we have going on with in the big tech companies right now. So being very mindful of incorporating that impact and thoughts on sustainability, and frankly costs, in just oftentimes projects are failing at scale because of the API charges that you're getting back from using generative AI.
Yeah, that sounds painful.
It can be extremely painful and go up. It'd be quite startling.
Yeah.
Just like the cloud bills we used to get, it was like, what? You left RDS running, and it was a big one. So yeah, I think this might be a second edition of the books, looking at the real business value and the trade-offs that you make from an architectural point of view of from the overall business. It's not just reputationally or regulation. It's the overall impact that you're having by using AI for certain use cases.
Yeah, so I know we're kind of coming up to the end of time. I could go on for hours. Maybe we should schedule another time. This was so much fun. I don't want to stop talking, right? And also take that my day job with Schneider Electric, probably want to take some of that with me again, and use the formula and use your input and learn from you guys, as we learn and hear from each other on LinkedIn. Now, you have the book that you can purchase today. There will be hardcovers and paperbacks coming very soon. The other aspect is, in some cases, you can work with the tools that we have at CDO Times, so you can do the self-assessment, look at that, and then I understand we all know that sometimes you need help, right? And so CDO Times has fractional executives that can help you out. I think some of them maybe I can count on this call for potential engagements, but I have a couple very impressive, as everybody's impressive on here. I know Grant, you're busy, I know, so I'm not signing you up for it. But for the fractionals on here and the fractionals that are featured on CDO Times, cdotimes.com, we are also here to help you with the assessment on the journey, as less or as much help as you need, right? To to work with the framework, do the evaluation. Sometimes it's just good to bring in somebody external that brings in the research versus having it internal. Sometimes harder to do that. So, but it's not a big five consulting cost. So I think that's just an offer out there. I even want to go so far that I will send a free book to folks if they want to schedule a call for like an initial assessment, and I'll send you a free book. With that being said, I think we're on top of the hour. Oh my God, the time just flew by. Fantastic. You guys,
Congratulations.
thank you so much to all the questions out there. All the engagement and insights. I love it. Let's do it again. But I think for now we're kind of ending the call. And thank you so much. I think this will be also recorded, so we'll have it available on our CDO Times YouTube channel, on cdotimes.com, and also on LinkedIn to a certain degree, and we'll repost some things. So super excited. All right, get the book, and let's do this together.
Thank you, Karsten. This is really fun.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right, logging off. Bye. See you later.